So is there something like an invisible coup happening inside the United States? It's a pretty explosive claim, and it's at the very heart of the book we're going to break down today. We're going to unpack all the allegations from the source material, piece by piece, so you can see the full picture they're painting.
The source material we're looking at really doesn't pull any punches. It kicks things off with this huge question right from the get-go. And really, it's the perfect way to jump into what turns out to be a really complex web of claims.
Okay, so the entire argument really boils down to one single foundational idea. And honestly, it's an idea that's designed to make you stop and go, wait, what?
And here it is. The core claim is that there are sitting members of the Mexican parliament who don't actually live in Mexico. Nope. The allegation is that they live full-time, right here in the United States, while representing Mexican citizens. The source frames this as a massive and mostly unnoticed challenge to U.S. sovereignty. And they even have a specific name for these officials. The source calls them Migrant Senators and Migrant Members of the Chambers of Deputy. You know, using a formal title like that frames it as if it's not just a random thing, but a recognized official category within the Mexican government. Now, to make this claim feel more real, the source gives a very specific example. They talk about a Mexican senator who supposedly lives in Arizona and who is allegedly pushing for legislation, get this, to make California the 33rd state of Mexico. This example is used to suggest that there's a much bigger agenda at play here.
Okay, so that leads to the obvious next question, right? If these officials are in fact operating inside the U.S., why? What are they trying to do? Well, the source material lays out a specific and pretty startling answer to that.
The book points to this direct quote, which it attributes to a Mexican official living in California, and it's presented as a very clear statement of purpose. I mean, the language is intense. Organize the militancy. It describes an effort to mobilize groups right here on U.S. soil.
And to kind of illustrate the alleged mindset behind this, the source points to another quote. This one is attributed to a Mexican congressman who they claim lives in Los Angeles and posted this on social media during some protests that involved clashes with police.
So the source pulls all these different threads together to paint a picture of the alleged objectives. It argues the goal here isn't just about, representing expats. The claim is that it's something way more confrontational. Organizing resistance, pushing back against immigrants who assimilate, and even clashing with American institutions. Now, an operation like this would obviously need some serious support. We're talking money, logistics, the whole deal. So the big question is, where does that help come from? Well, the source material tries to connect the dots.
According to the source, this alleged support system has two main parts. First, there's funding that supposedly comes from certain NGOs based right here in the U.S. And second, there's the claim of direct material support from the Mexican government itself, funneled through its consular officials. And to really emphasize the scale of this official support network, the source highlights one number in particular, 53. So what's so special about 53?
Well, that's the number of Mexican consulates in the United States. And to give you some context, the source compares it to other major countries. For example, China has 6 consulates here. Great Britain has 7. The argument being made is that 53 is a disproportionately huge number, and that this consular presence has been, in their words, politicized. So from here, the argument takes a pretty dramatic turn. The source expands its focus and tries to connect all these alleged political activities with international criminal organizations. And yeah, this is where the claims get even more complex. So, to understand this next part, we first have to talk about a key organization the source mentions, the Sao Paulo Forum. It's described as a big conference, basically a network of leftist political groups from all over Latin America.
And the second key group in this claim is Progressive International. The source identifies it as an organization that was co-founded by U.S. Senator Bernie Sanders and says other progressive American politicians are actively involved.
Okay, so here's how the source alleges this all connects. Step 1, drug cartels are supposedly funding the Sao Paulo Forum. Step 2, that forum then partners up with groups in the U.S. like the Democratic Socialists of America. Step 3, Progressive International is said to have advisors with links to the cartels. And Step 4, the claim is that this whole alliance works together to push for a shared agenda that would help the cartels, things like open borders and ending the war on drugs.
And the interview asserts that this isn't just a theory. The claim is that actual members of the U.S. Congress, who are connected to Progressive International, have introduced real legislation that just so happens to align with the cartel's interests, specifically bills to stop the war on drugs.
So, where does all of this lead? We're now at the source's ultimate claim,
the alleged endgame for this entire network.
To bring the whole argument full circle, the source explicitly names the Democratic Socialists of America, the DSA, as official members of the Sao Paulo Forum. This is presented as the final, direct link connecting a domestic U.S. political group to that alleged foreign cartel-funded network.
And this quote is really the powerful conclusion the source builds towards. It attributes this statement directly to members of this alleged movement, framing their goal not just as reform, but as a deliberate effort to subvert the United States from within by, quote, importing the revolution.
And that's the full breakdown of the invisible coup argument, just as it's laid out in the source material. Now, whether you find these claims credible or not, they definitely raise a fundamental and pretty challenging question for our time. In a world this interconnected, where exactly is the line between foreign advocacy and domestic interference? It's a lot to think about.